the Hamas terror tunnels, as well as seeing the amazing Iron Dome system that stopped 90% of incoming rockets. Sorry. We met with many members of the Knesset, as well as city mayors. We met the mayor of Ashkelon, where 75 of the rockets that landed from Gaza landed, causing significant physical damage and mental trauma. We visited Lod and East Jerusalem, and overall the visit was very much appreciated, and the strength and resilience of the Israeli people is really extraordinary. So we have an interesting program today. I'll remind you all to use the hand raise function if you have a question, and as most of you just heard, we're on the record. I think we'll start with Tal, if that's okay.
Sure.
Tal Schneider is a political correspondent for the Times of Israel. Previously, she was the diplomatic and political correspondent for Globes, Israel Business News, and a frequent commentator on Israeli radio and television stations. Tal ran her own political blog, The Plog, and served as Washington, D.C. correspondent for Ma'ariv Daily. Her stories have appeared in Haaretz, The Marker, Mako, Saluna, and more. So Tal, thank you very much, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. It's nice being here, and Gil and I share the room in the parliament, in the Knesset, so now we share this space. It's actually great. We work for competing outlets, but we are really good friends for many years, so it's great to be here. Well, we are in the midst of very dramatic days. I know reporters maybe seems to think many things are dramatic and historic. But really, I mean, this might be the last couple of days of Netanyahu's 12 years government in Israel. I think whenever people are asking me, I'm not pretty sure it's really happening. I was at Ramat Gan at the Maccabi village, the Kfar HaMaccabiya. I was there yesterday from 5 p.m. Well, first I was at the Knesset for Herzog election. It seems like really like it happened a week ago. And afterwards, at around 3 p.m., I drove to Ramat Gan, to the place where the negotiations were taking place. And I was there between 5 p.m. to 1 a.m., waiting to see what's going on. I couldn't tell until the last minute, are these guys serious? Is it happening? But when Mansour Abbas actually arrived at around 9 p.m., I think, and went up and then went down to talk to the reporters, I realized that this is happening. Then we had this photo of Yair Lapid and Naftali Bennett sitting with Mansour Abbas. And I got to tell you, as an Israeli, as one who has been covering and also who has been caring for the Israel Arab society, to the Israel Muslim society, which I know is very, very, the relationship have always been tense and difficult. This is nothing new. But what we have seen in the last month was crazy, even beyond anything that we could, think can happen. After, the Gaza escalation, after the riots, after such really horrific days and nights, to see Mansour Abbas going up there and sitting with the right-wing faction leader, Naftali Bennett, who is designated to be prime minister, and a centrist party and liberal parties, but, really such a diverse, group, to see them sitting together, sending us a photo, signing on an agreement. I mean, I can't even start to think, just a couple of weeks after people were beating each other on the streets. This is, this is very Israeli, but also, I don't want to be too emotional, but kind of a feeling of a new era. Having said that, I don't know how long this government can hold. I really don't know. We are still looking at this last, couple of days, thinking maybe it's not going to happen, because as you all follow the news, you see maybe the partners of Naftali Bennett falling out, and you see the demonstrations around the houses of the right-wing party members, and you see maybe the Speaker of the Knesset taking his time to letting those groups fall apart. So everything can happen. They can fall apart. they may not be sworn in. I don't know, but I do have this feeling that if they went all the way and signed up those agreements last night, maybe it is happening.
Dianne, you're muted.
I always mute myself and then I forget. I'm sorry, Rachel. Maybe I should let you mute me. Gil has been the chief correspondent and political analyst for the Jerusalem Post for 20 years. Well connected to Israeli and Palestinian leaders, he's interviewed major figures across the Israeli political spectrum and is a regular analyst on CNN, Al Jazeera, and other news outlets. Called the most optimistic man in Israel by Israeli television, Hoffman provides a behind-the-scenes look at the intrigue and humor in the Israeli political arena. Gil, thanks. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dianne, and it's a pleasure being with Tal again. I don't normally get to see her on Thursdays, so it's good to be with her, and it's great to see such a cross-section of the American Jewish leadership here on this call. A lot of old friends here. I appreciate you taking the time on a busy day to follow the excitement that's going on over here, where it's such a never-ending drama, and it's finally looking like we're getting closer to an end. We have been working nonstop for 2.5 years. It's since December 24th, 2018, when that day, I remember the speaker of the Knesset at the time, Yuli Edelstein, said they were going to end the session early for Christmas, and that he forgot that he was doing that for Christian members of Knesset, but he forgot that none of the Christians in the Knesset aren't Orthodox, though they're all Orthodox. They celebrate Christmas in January. So the only one who's going to be benefiting from this was going to be me, as someone who celebrates his American Jewish heritage by going to a movie and eating Chinese food that night. Since then, we've been working nonstop in 4 elections, proving Einstein's theory of insanity of doing the same thing over and over and over and over again and expecting a different result. And so now history is happening. Tal is absolutely right to focus on Mansour Abbas being the key. Who would have thought 2 years ago, when Naftali Bennett was forced out of the Knesset, lost by 1,400 votes, people thought his political career would be over, that he would form a government 2 years later with Mansour Abbas. And the context of an Arab party joining the coalition formally for the first time is that the Abraham Accords taught that you don't have to wait for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict to be solved anymore, for Arab countries to make peace with Israel. And then Israeli Arabs said, well, we've been waiting for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict to be solved for all this time, not joining any government, where the spoils are divided up in the coalition, because we've been waiting for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict to be solved. And Mansour Abbas said, I'm stopping that. He decided this is a time to start cooperating with the Israeli government. And so no matter who would have formed the government, whether it would be Netanyahu or Lapid and Bennett together, Mansour Abbas would be a part of it. And what he has received in these coalition talks are things that are not controversial in building up the infrastructure of the Arab community and fighting Arab crime inside their communities. And so it's happening with the government of Lapid and Bennett together. And the way that that's happened has been fascinating. I mentioned to William the other day when he came to the Knesset that I took him back to 2012, August 2012, when there was this debate among candidates for the Bayit Yehudi leadership. And there was 2 old guys running against this young guy named Naftali Bennett. And afterward, I spoke to Bennett for 2 hours outside in the cool Jerusalem air. It's cool in August in Jerusalem at night. And he asked me about Yair Lapid, who had entered politics a few weeks before, if I'd gotten to know him. And I told him that I spent about 4 hours in Lapid's den, where he's got these Muhammad Ali boxing gloves. And I said, Lapid's a great guy. I think that you'd get along with him very well. And he asked me for Lapid's phone number. And that was the first step toward the formation of the government that we have today. So Bennett played this election very smartly. he decided to form his own political camp. Everybody said these elections, the 4 in a row, are to Bibi or not to Bibi, the ultimate cliche. You can't be neither one. And interview after interview, he said, I'm not joining any camp. And that's what led to him becoming prime minister. He holds the balance of power. He won with only 7 seats, really 6 now, the right to be prime minister first in a rotation. And that's absolutely incredible that he did with this smart political strategy. And that neutrality brought him to power. Now, people are asking, so how long will it last? My answer is it was Netanyahu who's the glue that brought this government together. And people say, oh, well, then after the government gets formed, they're not going to have any glue anymore. And the answer is yes, they will. Netanyahu is not going anywhere. He's going to remain the leader of the Likud, the head of the right, the leader of the opposition, and its candidate for prime minister whenever the next election would be. Imagine if Donald Trump held a statutory role. He already has so much influence over the Republican Party, even though he is unemployed. So imagine if he had the power that Netanyahu does. That's what will keep the center, left, right, and the Arab Party sticking together, because the specter of Netanyahu is going to be there on the sidelines. And so what can bring this government down? A conviction. A conviction for Netanyahu in a trial that would make the Likud have primaries to elect a new leader that I don't think right now could happen. And then you'd have 80 members of Knesset on the right say, wait a second, I don't want Yair Lapid to become our prime minister on August 27th, 2013. Mark that day in your 2023. Thank you. Mark that in your calendar. That's the day it's supposed to happen. We want to have a coalition of nothing but the right. That can only happen if Netanyahu would leave. And I don't see him leaving unless a judge brings him down and would have to go to the Supreme Court. So Netanyahu is still young, 71 years old. His father died at the age of 102. He's got a long way to go. He'll continue to make it exciting in Israeli politics.
Thanks, Gil. You know, a number of the comments that I heard when we were there for a few days were around the negotiating around who was going to get what ministry, and then beyond that, how difficult it was going to potentially be to get things done for this coalition, given the tremendous political spectrum. Would either of you care to comment on your view on that, and whether there was anything in the ministries that surprised you?
You're talking about the division of the power among this government, inside the government?
Yeah.
Well, there were some, pulling from here and there. There was like this argument about the judicial committee. I suppose I was kind of expecting that. I think the right wing is trying very hard to prove to their base that they didn't give up on everything. And nominating judges is a crucial component of that. Another one is the, Gideon Saar is going to be the Justice Minister, wants to have the Attorney General institution split into two. They will probably try to do, I don't know, I'm not sure how much it is interesting to, foreign crowd or to, it has nothing to do with foreign policy. It's a little bit of an internal Israeli argument that is going on for many years. And I think it's a legitimate argument. The narrative right now is that the Labor made most of the compromise. Well, I'm not sure about that also. I think since it's a very peculiar situation, when you have lots of medium-sized parties between the 7 and 8 seats, so they are, on one side, it's spread out and very diverse. On the other hand, it's very equal because you have Merav Michaeli with 7 seats on one side, and then Gideon Saar and Naftali Bennett with 6 seats on the other side, except Yair Lapid, who has 17 seats. And maybe this is a note to be taken. And I'm not sure that we all have written yet what we think about it, but definitely Yair Lapid has proven in the last 2.5 years what modesty means. And by saying that, I'm smiling because one of his nicknames, you know, his name is Yair, but one of the nicknames that the media and the people gave him from the many years that we knew him as an anchor and also as a politician, the name was Yahir, not Yair, Yahir, with which means an arrogant person. And what we've seen in the last 2.5 years is we've seen Yair Lapid making concessions one time after another. So he made a concession at the first election when he wanted to have Benny Gantz standing at the top of the ticket, and he decided to let him, you know, come first. That was a major concession. Then on the second election cycle, he was supposed to be in a rotation with Gantz, and he also waived that. Now we see him a day after the fourth election, or a couple of days after the fourth election, standing in front of the camera and saying, I have 17 seats, but I really want to have a new government, a change government being formed. Hence, I am waiving on my right to become a prime minister first. And I am turning to my friend, Naftali Bennett, and I want him to become first. And everybody were like, oh my God, this is, you know, where is the ego of this politician? Where is Yair Lapid that we all know? And this is maybe the most important component of those negotiations was the ability of Yair Lapid to get everybody around him to compromise. And if you look at the files at the ministries, actually Yesh Atid, his party, which is the biggest, took the little share. They took, I mean, you know, relatively to their amount of their seats, they took, you know, less ministries, not the right or the sexy, you know, they didn't fight over ministries, which was amazing. And they will have to be the major component of this government. They sit right in the center. They have to get everybody agreeing from left and right, negotiated. You know, he managed to get Mansour Abbas meet with Naftali Bennett for the first time about a month ago. Was that, Gil? I think a month ago in the Knesset. And all of the political reporters were like, oh my God, Naftali Bennett is having a meeting with Mansour Abbas. That's incredible. Now, well, you saw last night the signatures, I mean.
Gil, anything you want to add?
Just the diaspora affairs portfolio, that anyone wanted it at all. The fact that it's nice to see that people care about you folks. You know, I interviewed Meirav Michaeli a few times during the election campaign. I interviewed all the party leaders, and she kept on talking about how much she cares about diaspora Jewry. You know, she had some fun going to an LGBT synagogue in New York that really made her excited about diaspora Jewry, and she was determined to get this portfolio that isn't seen as particularly lucrative, and that now she's got still 3 people fighting over it within her party. Nachman Shai, we all know, Rabbi Gilad Kariv, who some of you know and like, and some of you know and would be fearful of, and then Aline Moati, who's a young rising star within the party. The 3 of them are all qualified in different ways for this portfolio, and we're waiting to see the final answer. I was told a few minutes ago when I asked, can I be told in time for the Conference of Presidents? I got told no. But whoever it's going to be.
Thank you for trying.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you for giving me an excuse to try to get it now. But whoever out of the 3 it's going to be, you're going to be served very, very well. You're going to have a professional who truly cares about improving the ties between Israel and American Jews across the political spectrum. And we can all agree that that's very important.
Okay, great. Thank you. Rachel, next question, please.
The next question is from Mark Klein of the ZOA.
Hi, thank you very much for your insights. Leaders of the Ra'am party have opposed the Abraham Accords, said Zionism is racism, support the right of return, said Jerusalem is not the capital of Israel. They don't accept Israel as a Jewish state. They're an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood. So I'm very concerned about them. My specific question, in the next, God forbid, war against Hamas or Hezbollah or God forbid, Iran, are you concerned that Ra'am could say, if Israel is reacting in a way that Ra'am considers too strong, too aggressive, that Ra'am can say, slow it down, or we're going to shut down the government? Is that a real concern that we Jews who love Israel can have or should have with respect to Ra'am?
Can I go first?
Sure.
The answer is no, Mort. And I think it's time to get used to this. There's a moderate Arab leader who wants there to be coexistence, who wants to work together, specifically Dafka, specifically with the Israeli right. What's terrible that we had this war, but if there's anything positive that came out of it, it's that Mort's question got answered in advance of the formation of this government. We saw how he acted. We had a war before the government was formed. And what did he do? He went to Lod with the Likud mayor of Lod, went to a synagogue that had been vandalized by Arabs and said, I'm gonna rebuild this synagogue. It was beautiful. He said it, by the way, in the same day that Naftali Bennett expressed a lack of faith in him that was apparently wrong. So I can understand people on the right being skeptical because of things said in the past, and there's a lot of water under the bridge. But even people who are known for being as right-wing in Israel as Mort is known for being in America are saying that this is a wonderful development that Israel's been waiting for decades. I heard Uzi Baruch, who's the head of Arutz Sheva, say it the other day on the radio, and saying that Netanyahu missed an opportunity to form a government with him, and that Bezalel Smotrich was wrong to not form a government with him. So and there's nothing that he does and says that would make right-wingers worry, or now anyway. He doesn't want to be involved in the Israeli-Palestinian issue or anything controversial whatsoever.
Tal, anything you want to add to that?
Yes, please. We actually took the effort in the Times of Israel to translate the entire charter of not the Muslim Brotherhood, but Ra'am Party charter to English. And you can all Google Ra'am Party charter in English and find out all the words that you never want to hear about the right of return and everything. It's all written. Now, I've called Mansour Abbas and asked him, well, listen, you want to be, this is like probably 3 months ago, maybe before the election. I was like, listen, you want to be part of, this is your campaign. You want to be part of a Zionist coalition. Why won't you get your shura? How what's the name? It's like the group of religious people who are governing.
The Sharia court.
The Sharia court.
Shura court.
Shura council. Court. The council. Why won't you gather the council and change the text? And and he started to say, well, listen, we are in the process of translating it. It's not really translated right. You don't really understand. It's not like that. It's not like that, and so on. I mean, come on. There is a gap. There is a huge gap between whatever is being written there to the actions this person is taking. It's a huge gap. And if you choose to be very, very worried and busy with reading all of the text of what is written in Arab, then it's a one option. But then you can also look at the actions. And Mansour Abbas, by the way, very lovely, likable guy, a dentist, is busy taking steps to mend all the gaps between the Jewish and Arab society by setting a personal example and by making, very far-fetched steps, things that we didn't even think we would see. So it's a huge gap. I mean, it's a huge gap between the statements that are written and the real reality of the life here in Israel. And I think, as I said earlier, the amazing part is that we were at each other a month ago, or less than a month, it's like 2 weeks ago. It's unbelievable, the pace of the events. And now, I mean, I don't think it's going to be lovey-dovey event. It's not going to be love is in the air. Mansour Abbas came with a specific list of claims. He wants to have Bedouin villages in the Negev built and have infrastructure. He wanted to have 14 Bedouin villages. I think he got only 3, and a committee that will probably look into the rest of them. He wanted to have the crime in the Arab society taken down. That needs money, and it needs thinking. It's not enough to have money and police officer. It needs much more than that. And he came with a list. He is not making himself busy with respect to whatever is going on in Ramallah or in Hebron. He doesn't really, I don't want to say he doesn't care, but he's not making himself busy in the lives of people in Shechem, in Nablus. He is making himself very busy with the life of people in Rahat and in Nazareth and so on. And he's being cheered at the Arab society for his courage. So.
Okay, thank you. Rachel, next question, please.
The next question is from Fred Zeidman of the Council for a Secure America.
So Gil, I got front run by William, but you were so phenomenal last week. My question, which I asked, was, okay, what's next? Who is warming up in the bullpen? I mean, all of us have some serious question about whether this coalition will hang together. And presuming arguably that it doesn't, and we certainly hope it might, who do you see coming to the forefront as a challenger to this? Is it just going to be Bibi again? Or are there some, I laughingly say, folks warming up in the bullpen who we can see taking the lead in the race for prime minister?
You're saying within the Likud, Fred?
No, just across the board. Whether it's within Likud, Likud would obviously be a part of that. I don't know if Bibi still has a firm grasp on that, or whether or not somebody else will emerge in Likud. But if you look across the board, and that's why I said the guys warming up in the bullpen, who do you see as the potential major players in the next prime minister's race?
Okay, so
I'm smiling because I'm hoping that we don't going to have another election.
Yes. So, Fred, I appreciate the baseball metaphor. I'm very proud of my Cubs winning 6 games in a row and everything. So, look, Naftali Bennett, we're just getting a 49-year-old prime minister. That's a very big deal. And here's the new generation very much taking over. And we thought it would come from within Likud eventually. And I've been waiting to cover a serious Likud primary in 20 years now, and it hasn't happened yet. Nir Barkat, the former mayor of Jerusalem, is building himself up little by little. He hasn't been allowed to be a cabinet minister, but he's used that to his advantage. He has all the money on earth at his disposal as a very, very successful venture capitalist. The Likud membership values a candidate being seen as worldly, the way that Netanyahu is, and the way that Barkat presents himself. And he has tried to build ties with the traditional Likud underclass in the development towns and the poor neighborhoods. He built this alliance with Miri Regev, that she would bring out the people and he would pay for it. And that's worked out very well for the two of them together. Events where you have a couple thousand people that she brings and he pays for and he talks to, the way that she can't. Let's not forget, if we don't have a government formed, the rotation that has to happen with Benny Gantz taking over in November, Miri Regev is our foreign minister, not speaking a word of English. So I would look ahead to him having a very bright future. And on the center left, look, as Tal said, Lapid has built himself up. Everybody said, oh, you need another general. And there are generals who are on the sidelines. Gadi Eisenkot, former chief of staff of the IDF, will probably enter politics next time. He made a very favorable impression in Washington, I know, when he was there working at the think tank. And you've got Yoram Cohen, the head of the Shin Bet head, who's going to enter politics next time. And then you've got Yossi Cohen, who just finished his term as head of the Mossad this week. And he will be a very serious candidate for a prime minister as the leader of the Likud and the right in the future.
Yeah, Yossi Cohen has to wait 3 years of, how it is called, freeze
Cooling
out?
off period.
Cooling off period. I would say that Netanyahu is not off the table. Netanyahu is very much in the game. He expects this government to collapse pretty soon, and he is. My personal opinion, it's not set in the facts because we don't know that yet. But this is what I presume Netanyahu will do. He will wait maybe a week after this government is formed. He will set up a date for a primaries for the Likud to win big time over the Likud primaries. Hopefully, Netanyahu doesn't like to have any opponent. So I don't know if Nir Barkat or Israel Katz will take and try to contest him. We haven't seen them do anything to contest him in the recent years. He will get himself re-elected very quick. We'll set up a date for the primaries maybe in a couple of weeks. This is the system. I mean, this is what he's been doing for years. I mean, he's done that. He has done that against former candidates, setting up a date in 2 weeks' time, not letting the other side get prepared, and then win in a big time, I don't know, 60, 70%, because the base of the Likud members are, very strong behind him, win, and then we'll wait for the government to collapse and run as the Likud candidate. So anyone who thinks that Netanyahu is off to any retirement in Caesarea doesn't know the person. He's really he's not finalized. I mean, and actually after, such an diverse and peculiar government, if it will be formed, we may see a wave of support to the Likud. He may come back, big time.
Okay, thank you, both of you. Rachel, next question, please.
The next question is from Rabbi Steve Gutow.
Thank you. First of all, Gil and Tal, this is, you get to speak at a really wonderful, exciting moment where we're all kind of hopeful, or most of us are, and happy. And my question is, in the spirit of multi-partisanship, which is, in America, bipartisanship is a big thing we talk about now. What could be done? I mean, each of you give me an idea of two things that wouldn't just benefit, one party or the other, or two parties or the other, but could benefit the whole country and could give some, resonance to this idea that really disparate people of disparate parties working together could do something for the benefit in the whole of Israel. And I'm not asking you to put your lives on the line, but just some ideas of something that could actually happen and make a difference, that people would say, this wasn't a bad idea at all. Let's keep up with this.
Who wants to go first?
Well, first of all, they need to pass the budget. If a budget will pass by August, everybody here will be like, oh my God, they're actually doing something that used to be, how do you say, used to be taken for granted.
Yeah,
They actually, I mean, we last time we had a budget, last time the Knesset passed the budget was March 2018. So hopefully a step of normalcy. And I would say that if we are not under attack from Gaza or from Syria or from Lebanon, if we are not attacked by terror organizations and for several months, or I don't know how long, then maybe this government will get its 100 days to start something. If we're going to be under a terror attack, I don't know what's going to happen.
Gil?
it's going to be boring, and boring is a good thing. You know, Yair Lapid, he said to the political reporters at his faction meeting this Monday, he said, I promise to make you very bored. And I'm going to make the education reporter and the welfare reporter be very busy. So it's not going to make headlines so much, but it's the kind of things that Israel's needed for a while. So you're talking about building a couple more hospitals. You're talking about building a couple more universities. Talking about building a new Arab city, which we haven't had in 70 years, and a hospital in an Arab community, which we don't have, or a university in an Arab community, which we don't have. You're talking about steps to bridge the gap between rich and poor, bring up the development towns, continue building highways that connect them, that bring the people closer to the center of the country where the jobs are, and build up the Negev, where you have 60% of the land and 8% of the population. That's going to have to change because there's too much traffic in the middle of the country. That's where the focus is going to be. I hope, did I put you to sleep? If so, it's good.
Thank you very much. Okay, next question, please, Rachel.
Next question is from Chuck Kaufman of B'nai B'rith.
Thank you, and thank you both for being with us. And I appreciate your insights on the election. I guess the question I have is, what impact will these elections have on the Palestinian political landscape and on their leadership? Is there a chance that someone with a new voice, someone who might be willing to take the risk from new charters of destruction to take that great leap forward in trying to be part of the patchwork of the new era, as you called it, Gil? Thanks.
I don't mind going first. The answer is no. It has zero impact on the Palestinians. Nothing is going to happen with them. The Israelis on the left that are part of the government would like to give up land, won't get to. The Israelis on the right who want to annex land won't get to. And you know what? It wouldn't have happened anyway, because the Palestinian leadership is not prepared to do anything. They just canceled the first election that they were supposed to have since January 2005 for president because they knew Hamas would win, no other reason. And Abbas is not in a place to take any steps. So nothing's going to happen as long as he's the leader, and he's going to be the leader until he dies. It's sad to say, but Abbas's death is the only thing that can help move the Palestinians forward. And the Biden administration, a lot of people here know the folks there better than I do, but I haven't seen them be particularly excited about getting involved in an issue where it's so easy to fail. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I probably think that maybe we're going to have a different approach to Gaza. If you ask about the Palestinians, the approach should be being much more tough on the Hamas. I know people outside of the country think that the Israeli government was really tough on the Hamas, but here, from left to right, many people think that Netanyahu was very soft on the Hamas, and that was actually so soft on them that he wanted the Hamas leadership to be successful in a way that they will survive and they will have, continuation of their dictatorship on the people of Gaza. And the reason for that, Netanyahu wanted the Hamas. I mean, this is not me saying, I'm not a security expert. We hear security expert and former military official saying this in their own words very, very strongly. They kept on saying it during the last escalation. I know it's mind-blowing. People from outside of the country don't get it, but the Israel current leadership was rooting for the Hamas. Actually, some of the pundits coming from the supporter of Netanyahu actually said that the Hamas is helpful to embolden Netanyahu's leadership, because from any time they attack us, everybody are looking for the strong leader, and on that route to make the Hamas such a strong enemy of Israel. Actually, it was quite amazing to see how strong they became, how many rockets they had. We were bombarded, here in my city. I live very far from Gaza. We had to run to the shelters. You all know that. I mean, I don't have to tell you. It was a shock to see how the Hamas got so strong from 2014. And who helped the Hamas to get so strong? Our leadership was the one who assisted them, letting money in and so on. So if there is one thing about the Palestinians that probably will change, and I think there isn't any argument on that, even not when you go all the way to Merav Michaeli from the Labor, is that you have to, cut back on the Hamas leadership and make sure. Why would Israeli leadership do that? Why did Netanyahu was so soft on the Hamas? Because he figured out that if the Hamas is strong, then Abu Mazen is very weak. That was the equation. And maybe that will change a bit. I totally agree with Gil. There's no one to negotiate with. Abu Mazen is 86 years old. We don't expect anything from him, but he is doing a good security job. I mean, the mere fact that during the Gaza escalation, we didn't have too many riots, just a little bit, but not too many riots in the Palestinians, in Judea and Samaria, it's a fact. And Israel leadership, including Bennett and including Saar and Lapid, they all agree on that Abu Mazen is definitely not as bad as the Hamas. And if you want to have a good, security cooperation in the West Bank, you better keep good, not good, but fine connections with him somewhat, and keep on treating the Hamas like your favorite partner or your favorite child. So this might change a bit, but other than that, maybe a security approach will change. I don't think, and the diplomatic approach will change, not in the next couple of years. As Gil said, there's no leadership on the other side at the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rahel, next question, please.
The next question is from Ken Bob of Amenu.
Thank you, Tal and Gil, for your presentations as always. My question is a little bit of a follow-up on what was just discussed. I just came back myself from 3 weeks in Israel, so I consumed a lot of Israeli media, whether it was TV or newspapers, and there was a lot of conversation about how this new government might form its foreign policy. And I think a lot of people talking about what's the balance of the security cabinet going to be. But beyond that, from your knowledge of Bennett and Lapid, how the two of you see them working together to form foreign policy, whether it's response to Biden's administration or other things that might happen in the world?
Well, I think Lapid is very well connected to the American administration, at least to the Democratic Party. He has I think he's friends with Ted Deutsch. I had a story about that. He's friends with Ted Deutsch, and he has Mark Mellman, and he's traveling to DC. Actually, he traveled to DC through this campaign, maybe once or twice. I think Bennett knows United States by appearing on the media. I mean, he lived there for a couple of years. He knows more about through the media. He doesn't have really good connection in the administration yet. As per disagreements or gaps between them, they will need to cooperate closely, because obviously Bennett doesn't have a government if Yair Lapid is upset. So Yair Lapid is the foreign affairs minister with 7 seats, and Bennett is the prime minister with 6 seats. They will have to be, in good terms with each other, and that includes Benny Gantz, who is actually right now meeting with the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, in the White House. So I suppose they will have to be very delicate with each other. Lapid and Bennett know each other several years, probably at least 10 years. And they've been good friends, but politicians and good friends, this is a different. It's not the same. I mean, they're good buddies, but it doesn't mean that they will definitely not agree on all fronts.
Gil, anything you want to add?
Yeah, sure. But based on the questions I'm being asked on Al Jazeera and BBC, and I was on Wolf Blitzer's show last night, The international community seems very worried about Naftali Bennett. That somebody more right-wing than Netanyahu is coming to power in Israel. And you're going to see Yair Lapid having to market, as foreign minister, having to market Naftali Bennett around the world and set the world straight that Israel's not about to go and eat Palestinians for breakfast and go and annex, Jenin. It's not going to happen. So I think the absence of action, I think already says something. They're going to focus on internal issues the way that America has realized it has to do. Less foreign policy, but Lapid will be handling the foreign policy. As Tal mentioned his relationship with Mark Mellman, and I want to add to that. Mark Mellman heads Democratic majority for Israel, whatever he calls it. He has been working over the last few years to build up Israel's ties with Democratic leaders in the United States when Ron Dermer was less interested in that. So that will now be done front and center by Lapid. He sees his goal as repairing Israel from 12 years of neglect of American progressive Jewry under Netanyahu, rightly or wrongly. I mean, Netanyahu explains very well how he's met with both sides of the aisle consistently, and that his image of being focused on the Republicans is factually incorrect, and I hope it is. But Lapid thinks it's right. And so that's where his focus is going to be right now in affirmative action.
Thank you. Rachel, next question, please.
The next question is from Marty Bressler of Americans for Peace Now.
Thank you for your comments, of course. My question is directed at the people who took to the streets to fight and destroy within the Israeli cities. How would you describe them? What part of the Israeli society do they come from? Is there any sign of organization among these people? And do you think they will play, or the street conflicts will play a role in what evolves in Israel over the near term?
Okay, who wants to start on that? Go ahead, Tal.
I wasn't, in the streets myself. I was covering everything from, looking at the computers and talking to people. My impression was, we have the data of who is now arrested. We know, but we know that about 92% of the people that are arrested are Arabs, and 8% of the people that are arrested are Jewish. But I have to tell you, my impression during this very tense week or so, my impression was that some of the Jewish riots against Arabs went unreported. I knew of a case that was not reported in the media, even though it was almost a lynch. We use the term lynch here, but I don't know. I know it's not accurate from your perspective, but this is what we say here. Today, we got a message from Israel's police saying that the person who was killed by stoning in Lod, the only person that was killed, the rest of the people that are, severely wounded, but one person was killed when he was driving, electrician, a worker that was driving through a very innocent person. Now the police suspect that the people that killed him are actually not Arabs, but Jewish that were thinking that he is an Arab because he is an electrician. So we don't know. The police is working on the cases. It's very confusing. I have to tell you that this specific person, Gil, do you remember his name? Yoshua, I think. The electrician from Lod that was killed, his family donated all of his organs to people that are sick all over Israel, and the people that got the organs are both Jewish and Arabs. And a couple of days later, there was a young guy that was shot by the police in Al-Fahim, I think, a 17-year-old guy, an Arab, and his family also donated his organs to Jewish people. So, with the really horrific scene that we've seen here, some lights I mean, were shining from really good people who were trying to calm things down. But when you are trying to figure out, who did what, it was really complicated. I think some of the people that were, committing those crimes were actually, you had Arab group that was trying to kill Jewish people in Jaffa. They mistakenly hit a 12-year-old Muslim kid who was almost burned to death. He's in a trauma still, but I mean, he was saved. But really, again, people were mistaking. I mean, some people, you can't really know, are they Arab, are they Jewish? So you have a mob attack who was trying to attack an Arab, then apparently they are attacking a Jewish, and so on. I mean, we had this experience in the past here in Israel where people were mistakenly, they didn't know if a person is a Jewish or Arab, and they attack him. And well, as I said earlier, I think the cases against Arabs, I mean Jewish mobs against Arabs, were underreported by me and my colleagues. That's what I think. That's what I've seen. And but we do have the data, and obviously communities. I think you have the mixed, the integrated cities of Lod and Ramle and Acre, and you have to ask yourself what happened in those integrated communities, because on the other hand, you do see you saw a gap between Lod and Ramle. This is like twin cities. So why was one city on fire and the other one did not? Or for example, how come Haifa, which is an integrated city, how come this city remained calm? Was the mayor of Haifa a woman by the name Einat? What was she doing? Apparently, from what I've heard, on the night that she saw all of the riots all around the country, she started to call immediately local leaders of communities, of rabbis and mosque leaders, imams, and community like matnas, like community organizations and so on. She called everybody and said, make sure that nothing is going around. So you do need a great local leadership, a great local leadership in those integrated cities. And I think maybe, what happened in Acre was a shock to everybody here, because Acre is a symbol of really, it's we don't really know yet were there people that are coming from outside of Acre, or was this local people? Because what we think is some of the rioters came from out of town in order to instigate and cause this. So it's really a question of where and what, and still very complicated and unsolved, I think, unsolved event yet.
Well, thank you for that. We really only have time for one more question, so I'm going to turn to William Daroff.
Great. Thank you all very much, Tal and Gil, for joining us, and everybody else for being here as well. I have 3 questions. The first is to follow up on Mort's question from the beginning. Despite what Abbas might say, under the pressure of a conflict, under the pressure of things blowing up left and right, is there really no way that he could withhold his support and make a governmental crisis along with the external crisis that would be happening? Secondly, this is the first government in at least a decade that, if it forms, it doesn't have any Haredi base, any of the religious parties in it. Yair Lapid is the son of Tommy Lapid, who famously led the Shinui party, which was a secular anti-religious party. Is there a chance that we'll see a glimmer of that in this new government? And then thirdly, real quickly, this time next week or 2 weeks from now, will there be a different prime minister? Bottom line, will Bibi Netanyahu still be the prime minister, let's say at the end of June? And thank you all.
So Gil, why don't you start on that tripartite question, please?
No problem. So let's start with the third part then. If they succeed in getting rid of the Knesset speaker, then we'll have a new prime minister on Monday. Right now they have 60 votes. They need 61 in order to get rid of the prime minister. It's very possible that the problematic member of Knesset in Naftali Bennett's party would quit the Knesset and let the next person come in. There's a 48-hour period for the resignation to take effect, and they don't count hours on Shabbos. So that means he has to quit tomorrow. That means we'll already know by tomorrow if we'll be swearing in the government this coming Monday, meaning as soon as possible, or the following Monday, which is as late as possible. Those are the choices. But either way, Netanyahu is out, and that's going to be something we're going to have to get used to. Regarding the smaller question, Abbas, I don't see him causing a crisis on the Palestinian issue. That's not him. I do see him causing crises over money. Tal said they have to build 4 new villages for Bedouin. Well, they better build 4 and not 3, because he can hold the government hostage over what'll sound like the littlest thing. And that's going to be in the news a lot. Now the fascinating question, which is about the ultra-Orthodox. The ultra-Orthodox have been left out of the government twice over the last 20 years. Once, as you said, by Tommy Lapid, and then again by Yair Lapid, together with Naftali Bennett, when they made that first bond.
But together with Bibi, Bibi left them out.
It was Bibi that did it, you're right. But, Lapid, he claims that Lapid and Bennett forced him to, and he didn't want to. And it makes sense math-wise. So both of those times, they tried to do various reforms, and it didn't really work. The person who's hurt the ultra-Orthodox more than anyone is Netanyahu, believe it or not. When he was finance minister, he cut child welfare benefits that facilitated ultra-Orthodox not working. It used to be that no matter how many children you had, the higher number of children gets more money. So you've got $50 for the 22nd kid, 100 for the third kid, 200 for the fifth, 400 for the 6th, 800 for the 7th. He changed that order. So this government, with Bennett being there, their hands are tied. He wants to win an election again. He wants to form governments again, and that means rebuilding bonds with the ultra-Orthodox. They're not going to go too far or do anything particularly revolutionary, except maybe on one thing, which is the Western Wall. Naftali Bennett is very proud that he helped build what little they built in terms of making there be egalitarian prayer space in the Western Wall. Obviously, Yair Lapid is in favor of it. This is, as is Benny Gantz, very strongly in favor of it. There you have a consensus issue where it's the ultra-Orthodox against the interests of religious pluralism, and with a diaspora affairs minister who's very big into religious pluralism, and Elazar Stern, who I wrote is the leading candidate for chairman of the Jewish Agency, liberal Orthodox Jew who wants to see, again, in egalitarian prayer space, more serious at the Western Wall. Watch how that does him.
I would just only comment on the ultra-Orthodox. I think they are also kind of fractured. We may see Aryeh Deri stepping down. We may see Litzman standing into trial. Moshe Gafni did not like to, one of the ultra-Orthodox leaders did not go to Netanyahu's faction meeting today. He is tired of signing on loyalty papers and so on. I don't think they will step into the government, but definitely some of them are, at least Moshe Gafni is trying to maybe, not be forgotten for the near future. But there will be a strong opposition for now.
And Tal, will Bibi be the prime minister on June 30th?
No, I don't think he will be. But if you ask me on June 30th, 2022, I don't want to commit because I really don't know how long this government will survive. I mean, it can be months, it can be, I don't know. So I think Bibi is not out of the picture at all. I mean, not at all. I said that before. So
Okay, thank you both for all your insightful comments. We had a lot of questions, couldn't get to all of them. And hopefully you'll both consent to come back and talk to us again as all of the events evolve, which I know they will over the coming days and weeks. But thank you both for your insights and have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody and an early Shabbat Shalom to everybody from Tel Aviv. Thank you.
Bye.